Yeah, because every time we got disruptions, right now it's the Strait of Hormuz, but we could also take when Ever Given got stuck in the Suez Canal or the pandemic or whichever example we want to bring up. There's always this call for why are we not more resilient? But at the end of the day, that's because we don't want to pay for it. When the market is normal, everybody seeks efficiency. We want the ships to be full. We want the terminals to be operating at maximum capacity. We don't want to have hundreds of trucks standing idle. We want all of them to be used. We don't want to see mountains of empty containers. They need to move cargo. We don't want to see goods sitting on shelves in the supermarket for months. They got to churn quickly. Everybody pursues efficiency. And as long as there are no disruptions, efficiency drives us to reduce all of these resilience barriers. When the proverbial shit then hits the fan, then we complain that we are not resilient. But if we are really honest, nobody wants to pay for it time and time again. One of my typically hypothetical go-to examples, and I sincerely hope it will stay hypothetical, is look at the port complex of Los Angeles Long Beach. It's located in a major earthquake zone. So what happens if we got a huge devastating earthquake that completely shuts down Los Angeles Long Beach? There is not enough capacity in North America to service the US. So if we really want to be resilient, we should build a copy of Los Angeles Long Beach somewhere else and have it sit idle just in case, because then we are resilient. Obviously, that's never going to happen because we're not going to build a second Los Angeles Long Beach just in case. But it is to illustrate the point that resilience in good times equals overcapacity. And in a world seeking efficiency, nobody wants to pay for that overcapacity.
So resilience versus cost to a degree. How much are you willing to pay for redundant capacity is what we're talking about. I think this also ties in a bit with tariffs and reshoring. Can you explain why wouldn't someone buy American? Because that does give them resilience versus importing from China, which can be a lot cheaper. So why wouldn't you want to be the first mover on that?
Because at the end of the day, it boils down to something as simple as short term versus long term. And this all starts when the consumer stands down in the supermarket. So I want to buy a shirt, and here's a foreign made shirt that might cost me $10. Here's a US made shirt that costs me $20. What am I going to buy? For most people, price drives it. And it's the same over and over again. We can make all the arguments we want about resilience, but many people make transactional decisions based on the here and now and not on a long-term expected payoff.
And it'd be the same if I needed an import for a factory. Say I wanted a steel ball bearing. I'm not going to buy the really expensive American ball bearing rather than import something cheaper, because while I might have a more resilient supply chain, I'll be doing what the politicians want me to. I'll be essentially be pricing myself out of my own industry.
Precisely, because if you are the only one doing it, you will have competitors who are not. That makes your product uncompetitive and you will drive yourself out of business. Once you're then driven out of business, then there might be this event where your resilience would be needed, but you got bankrupt long before you ever get to that point.
The difficulties of policy making. Greg, from a journalism point of view, you cover these crises as they happen every day. Do you see any evidence the industry actually learns and changes, or is it always the same story?
Yeah, I mean, I've been covering this industry over the last 5 years. It's really just been a lurch from one crisis to another. Remember the days when when a new sort of 8,000 TEU monster ship would have been the big story. How big is too big? But but there have been so many severe supply chain disruptions over the past few years that companies they've learned how to be more resilient. The supply chains are pretty efficient these days. And, obviously there's no way to insulate yourself from these black swan events. But, shippers have responded with things like extra suppliers, more stock for critical parts, better visibility technology, faster decision making. But, the global system is still built around efficiency and a handful of choke points. And when one of those gets hit, it just has a wider impact. And that simply needs to be managed somehow.
Maybe as an added comment here, we make it sound like the system is incredibly fragile. I still think the pandemic is the best case in point. Despite a global pandemic we hadn't seen in 100 years, despite all of the disruptions, more freight than ever before in human history was actually moved. It was more delayed, it was more expensive, but it was moved.